I'm Noli Carver, 31, and 3 weeks ago, my sister slammed a door on my life so hard it almost broke me. I never thought I'd be the kind of person sleeping in my car outside their own childhood home, watching the porch light flicker like a cruel joke. But that's exactly where I was. It was 9:48 p.m., rain pelting the windshield, and my key, the one I'd used since I was 14, didn't fit anymore. Let me back up. I didn't come back home to cause trouble. I came back because life knocked me flat. I lost my job as a freelance editor when my biggest client folded. My savings were already thin after my breakup with Marcus, the guy who swore he loved me but couldn't handle my anxiety attacks. I gave up my downtown apartment because I couldn't cover the rent. So, I packed what little I had left into my Honda Civic and drove back to the Carver house in Portland, Oregon, thinking maybe, just maybe, my sister Isley would give me a little grace. I mean, we shared bunk beds as kids. We used to sneak ice cream after bedtime. She used to braid my hair before school dances. I thought family still meant something. But Isley wasn't that sister anymore. She was the version of herself who ran the Carver house like a CEO runs a corporation. Efficient, cold, profit-driven. She and her husband Brannick lived there with their daughter, Ellie, and from the second I walked through the door with my overnight bag, it was clear. I wasn't family. I was overhead. The first week was tolerable. She gave me a list of chores like I was a teenager again. Pay for utilities, contribute to groceries, keep quiet after 9 p.m. I was too broke to argue, so I swallowed my pride and tried to keep the peace. I cooked dinner a few nights, babysat Ellie when they needed a night out, and spent my days applying for jobs at the local library, bookstores, anywhere that wouldn't kill my soul. But no matter what I did, I could feel Isley watching me, judging. Like I was dead weight she couldn't wait to shake off. Then Tuesday night happened. I'd picked up a late-night gig editing marketing copy for a fitness startup. It wasn't glamorous, but it was money. I told Isley I'd be home by 9:30, but traffic was brutal, and I walked up the driveway at 10:15, exhausted but relieved to finally make a little progress. That's when I noticed the porch light was off. Strange. It was always on when someone was home. I reached for the doorknob, turned it, and nothing. Locked. Confused, I pulled out my keys, the same old set I'd had since high school. Slid it in. It didn't fit. I tried again, jiggling it like maybe the lock had jammed. Still nothing. I knocked. First gently, then harder. My hands were shaking, whether from the cold or something worse, I couldn't tell. No answer. I called her cell, straight to voicemail. I called Brannick. Same thing. For a second, I told myself they probably fell asleep early. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Isley. I can still see those words burned into my retinas. This isn't your home anymore. Goodbye. No explanation, no conversation, just gone. Erased. I stood there, drenched and shaking like a stray dog on the wrong porch. I thought about sleeping on the porch swing like some sad movie character, but the humiliation burned too hot. So I got back in my car, slammed the door shut, and sat there, staring at the house where I'd built blanket forts and blew out birthday candles. I didn't cry. Not yet. I was too stunned to feel anything except hollow. That's when I checked my email. Notifications, junk mail, and one subject line that didn't belong. Urgent Carver Family Property Trust Inquiry. From a law firm I'd never heard of. And in that moment, a part of me I thought was dead spark to life. Why would a lawyer contact me about the house? And what the hell was the Carver Family Property Trust? I sat there gripping my phone like it was a lifeline. Heart pounding so loud it drowned out the rain. That house wasn't just Isley's. And something told me this was far from over. I barely slept that night. My car reeked of fast food wrappers and damp clothes, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw that text from Isley burned behind my eyelids. This isn't your home anymore. Goodbye. That sentence felt like being orphaned twice. First when Mom and Dad passed, and now by the only family I had left. By morning, I couldn't ignore the email anymore. I parked outside a dingy coffee shop off Burnside, stole some Wi-Fi, and clicked open the message from Beckman and Rowe LLP. Dry legal speak filled the screen. Something about a Carver Family Property Trust, my rights as a co-beneficiary, and a request to schedule an urgent consultation regarding recent developments at the property. Co-beneficiary. That word flipped something in my chest. I wasn't just some house guest. I wasn't some charity case squatting in my sister's home. Legally, I had a claim. Maybe even more than that. I called the number listed. My voice cracked on the first try, so I coughed and tried again. Beckman and Rowe, this is Amanda. Hi, my name's Noli Carver. I got your email about the trust. I don't know what's going on, but I think my sister locked me out of the house last night. There was a pause, then the clatter of keys. Yes, Ms. Carver. We've been waiting to hear from you. Mr. Rowe has time this afternoon at 2:30. Can you make it? I checked my phone battery. 13%. My wallet had just enough for gas and maybe a cheap sandwich. But something told me this wasn't the kind of meeting you postponed. I'll be there. At 2:30 sharp, I walked into a glass-walled office building downtown, feeling wildly out of place in my wrinkled hoodie and 3-day-old jeans. Everything smelled like lemon cleaner and power. The receptionist smiled politely but didn't offer me water. Probably figured I couldn't afford to spill it. They led me into a sleek conference room with a wall of windows overlooking the Willamette River. I barely had time to sit before the door opened, and in walked Charles Rowe. Tall, silver hair, charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Ms. Carver, he said, voice calm but sharp. Thank you for coming on short notice. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Didn't have much else going on. Got locked out of my house last night. He didn't laugh. Instead, he opened a thick file and slid a page toward me. Let's start with this. Your parents established the Carver Family Property Trust 12 years ago. Both you and your sister are equal beneficiaries. Upon their passing, the house was to be jointly owned and maintained by both of you. Neither party can unilaterally remove the other from the property. I stared at the words, my stomach twisting. So, she can't just kick me out? Legally, no. And changing the locks without a court order violates the trust agreement. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Relief mixed with a bitter anger. All this time, she acted like she owned it outright. Like I was a guest overstaying my welcome. Rowe flipped to another section. It gets more complicated. The trust includes a maintenance fund for the property's upkeep. About $150,000. Your sister, as acting trustee, had access to those funds. But we noticed withdrawals, large ones. Exotic travel, spa renovations, a luxury kitchen remodel. None of these were approved expenses. My head spun. Wait, she used trust money for herself? Rowe nodded, steepling his fingers. That's embezzlement, Ms. Carver. If you wanted to, you could press charges. I stared at the papers, my heart pounding. I'd been living on top ramen and canned soup while Isley was sipping cocktails in Tulum. But why now? Why lock me out yesterday? I whispered. Rowe gave a thin smile. We sent her an audit request 3 days ago. She likely panicked. Removing you would make it easier to claim the property solely hers. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. So, what happens now? Rowe closed the file with a soft thud. We'll send her a cease and desist today. You have the right to re-enter the property immediately. If she refuses, we'll proceed with court action. I nodded slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. But just as I gathered my things, Amanda from the front desk knocked on the door, pale-faced. Mr. Rowe, there's another issue. Ms. Carver, your sister's attorney just emailed us. She's claiming you forged your mother's signature on the trust documents. She's filing for fraud. I froze mid-step. My throat tightened like a vice. Aisley wasn't just locking me out. She was trying to erase me entirely. I left that law office shaking, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the traffic outside. Fraud. She was accusing me of forging our mother's signature, like I was some con artist trying to steal what was never mine to begin with. I mean, how do you even fight something that dirty? I sat in my car, staring at the cracked windshield, wondering how it got this bad. I didn't want a war. I just wanted my home back. But Isley wasn't going to stop until she'd painted me as some villain who needed to be erased from the family story. The next few days felt like walking a tightrope blindfolded. My lawyer, Mr. Rowe, filed a formal response denying her claims and demanding an emergency hearing. He kept telling me to stay calm, to trust the process. But trust was in short supply those days, especially when every time I scrolled through social media, I saw posts of Isley playing the perfect mom, hosting brunches, painting pumpkins with Ellie, acting like the world's most wholesome human being. Meanwhile, I was sleeping in my car, trying to figure out where I could shower without spending the last $20 in my account. 3 days later, we were back in that same glass conference room. Except this time, it wasn't just lawyers. Isley showed up, wearing her crisp white blazer and that fake smile she always used when she wanted to look innocent. Brannick trailed behind her, quiet as ever, like some unwilling shadow. When Mr. Rowe laid out the trust documents again, it was like watching a tennis match. He'd point to the original signatures, the notarized dates, the maintenance fund statements. Her lawyer would twist it, saying there were irregularities, potential misunderstandings, areas of concern. I sat there, feeling like a ghost at my own funeral. No one looked at me like a person, just a problem to be solved. Then, halfway through the meeting, something shifted. Rowe slid a printed email across the table. "This was recovered from your mother's account backups," he said, voice steady. "It's dated 3 weeks before she passed. In it, she confirms her intentions for the trust. She names both daughters as equal owners of the property and specifically asks for Noli to have a creative workspace in the home." My breath caught. I didn't even know this email existed. Isley's smile cracked for the first time. She reached for the paper with shaking hands, reading it like it was written in a language she didn't understand. "She never told me this," Isley whispered, voice small. "Because you never listened," I said, quietly but sharp enough to cut the air. For a second, I thought maybe we'd reached the tipping point. Maybe she'd finally see me, not as competition, but as family. But then her lawyer leaned in and whispered something in her ear. And just like that, the wall came back up. "She was dying," Isley snapped, her voice suddenly cold again. "You manipulated her when she was vulnerable." I felt the ground drop out from under me. But before I could speak, Brannick finally raised his head. "That's not true." His voice was low, rough like he hadn't spoken in days. Every head in the room turned. "I was there the night Mom wrote that email," he continued, clearing his throat. "She asked me to witness it because she knew Isley wouldn't listen. She was clear. The house was meant to be shared, and she didn't want Noli to ever feel like she didn't belong." The room went silent. Even Isley froze, blinking like she'd just been slapped. I stared at Brannick, my chest tight. Why hadn't he said anything sooner? But before I could ask, Isley shoved back her chair, the legs scraping loud against the polished floor. "You've been siding with her this whole time?" she hissed at him. Brannick didn't flinch. "Number, I've been watching you destroy the only family you had left." And right there, in that sterile, glass-walled conference room, I realized the real betrayal hadn't just been mine. It had been his, too. I couldn't tell if the air had gotten colder or if it was just the way Isley stared at Brannick like she'd never seen him before. For a second, no one spoke. Even Mr. Rowe sat back, his hands folded, letting the silence do its work. But I knew better. Silence never lasted with my sister. "You betrayed me," she hissed, voice shaking but sharp enough to cut glass. "In front of her?" I wanted to speak, to break the tension before it snapped. But Brannick surprised me again. "I didn't betray you, Isley. I protected the truth. Something you buried the second Mom got sick." She let out a bitter laugh, looking at me like I was dirt under her shoe. Of course. Poor Noli. The helpless victim as always. I felt my jaw clench. I didn't ask for your pity. I asked for my home, the one Mom wanted us to share. Her eyes flicked away like she couldn't bear to look at me anymore. You can have the house, Noli, but it won't fix you. I almost laughed at how fast she folded. But it wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I could see it in her smile. Mr. Rowe cut in, calm but firm. We'll finalize the transfer of ownership per the trust's terms. You'll vacate the property by the end of the month. Isley gave a small nod, collecting her things like this was just another boardroom deal. But as she stood, she threw one last grenade. Oh, and Noli? She said, smoothing her jacket. Enjoy the house. You'll need it, especially after you find out what Brannick did with your part of the fund. I froze. What the hell are you talking about? But she was already gone, heels clicking down the hallway, leaving me standing there with a knot in my chest. I turned to Brannick, who suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. Tell me she's lying, I whispered. He shifted, rubbing the back of his neck like a guilty teenager. I thought I was helping. A few years ago, when the business was struggling, I took out a loan against the trust fund. Your share. Isley didn't want to touch hers. Said if I believed in the business, I'd find a way to fix it myself. I stepped back like he'd slapped me. You used my inheritance to save your company? His voice cracked. I meant to pay it back, I swear. But then the pandemic hit. Then Ellie's school tuition. And now, it's gone. Gone. While I was eating ramen noodles in a motel parking lot, he was gambling my future on his stupid coffee shop empire. I felt something snap inside me. You watched her kick me out, I said, my voice low, knowing full well that you'd already stolen from me. And you stood there, quiet. Brannick dropped his head, shame burning across his face. I didn't know how to fix it. I stared at him, heart pounding, hands trembling. Well, I do. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I felt clear. I wasn't going to beg them to give back what was mine. I was going to take it. Mr. Rowe cleared his throat. There are legal remedies, Ms. Carver. You can pursue repayment through civil court, with interest. Or you can force a sale of Brannick's business assets under the trust's protective clauses. Brannick's face went pale. If you do that, the shop's gone. My staff... I cut him off. You should have thought of that before stealing from me. The conference room fell silent again. But this time, I wasn't scared of it. And just as I gathered my things to leave, Mr. Rowe stopped me with one last bombshell. Oh, Ms. Carver, one more thing. During the audit, we discovered a secondary trust account your mother set up exclusively in your name. It's never been touched. I froze, breath catching in my throat. How much is in it? He smiled just slightly. Roughly $250,000. And just like that, everything changed. I walked out of that law office with two things I never thought I'd have again: power and peace. But don't get me wrong, power doesn't feel like some grand, victorious anthem. It feels quiet, steady, like finally catching your breath after years of drowning. The first thing I did was file the paperwork to claim my full ownership of the Carver house. Mr. Rowe handled the legal side, but I walked through those doors myself, carrying a new set of keys. No fanfare, no dramatic confrontation. Just me and the echo of my own footsteps. I stood in the living room where Mom used to string holiday lights and realized for the first time it was finally mine. Not a battlefield, not a hostage situation. Just home. But I wasn't done yet. 2 weeks later, we went to court over the stolen trust funds. Brannick showed up looking like a man who hadn't slept in days, his suit wrinkled, his confidence gone. Isley sat beside him, arms crossed, icy as ever, but even she couldn't hide the cracks this time. The court-appointed auditor laid it all out. Unauthorized withdrawals, falsified maintenance invoices, misuse of trust funds. And the judge didn't hesitate. Brannick was ordered to liquidate his business assets to repay the full amount, plus interest. His beloved coffee shop, the one he claimed was his life's work, was sold to cover his debt. Isley tried to spin it as my revenge, but the court didn't buy it. The record spoke louder than her rehearsed outrage. As for her, the judge removed her as trustee effective immediately, citing breach of fiduciary duty and willful neglect. She lost all control over the trust, reduced to a mere beneficiary. That crushed her more than any lawsuit ever could. She still has the family name, the polished reputation on social media. But now, everyone in our circle knows how far she went to erase me, how deep her resentment ran. The invitations stopped coming. The power couple image shattered. And me? I used part of the untouched secondary trust to renovate the Carver house. Not to make it flashy, but to make it mine. I turned Mom's old sewing room into a writing studio where I finally launched my editing business full-time. I built a life around peace, not proving myself. I don't hear from Isley anymore. Not a text, not a call. Brannick sent one apology email, short and strained. I didn't reply. I don't think I will. And that's the thing no one tells you about winning. It's not loud. It's not a movie ending. It's quiet. It's you, making dinner in your own kitchen without waiting for someone to tell you you don't belong there. A few months later, as I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, my neighbor, Mrs. Halloway, waved over the fence. "Looks like home again, Noli," she said with a smile. And for the first time in years, I believed her. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that family doesn't give you your worth. And no matter how much they try to take from you, they can't rewrite who you are unless you let them. But rebuilding yourself? That part's on you. And honestly, it's the hardest, most freeing thing I've ever done. If you've ever had to stand up to family, or if you've ever lost your place in the world and fought to build it back, I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Let's be honest here, not perfect. And if this hit close to home, feel free to subscribe and stay a while. I've got more stories where this came from. Thanks for listening. Really.